Hi everyone, Uncle Nacki here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today I wanted to show you another section of my T206 cards that are ungraded, and been doing a lot of these videos lately. Been enjoying them, and I hope everybody else is enjoying them too, and learning something. That's kind of the main key to these videos is, hopefully, some new collectors out there, will learn a little something about these cards, and either it will help them continue to collect the cards, or it may, spark some interest in maybe, pursuing a collection, such as not necessarily this set, but maybe a different vintage set. And kind of like maybe temporarily get away from some of the newer things that are out there, and for the younger viewers, that sometimes tends to happen. When you're younger, you tend to collect more of the newer stuff because it's a little less expensive, it's easier to find, and then as you get older, your interests change, and you tend to get hooked on one of these older sets. I guess you could kind of think of some of these older vintage sets of more of a grown-up type of collection, but honestly, you could collect these at any age. As long as you have the knowledge, and that's what the purpose of these videos are for, is to give you some of that knowledge, and how to go about collecting these cards without wasting a lot of money, staying within some sort of a budget, and different ways to go after the set and enjoy it while you're doing it. It is more of a long-term project, so if you're used to finishing things fast, this may not be the right thing for you at this time. But as you get more used to collecting things, and you start completing a lot of the much easier sets, you're gonna have that need to collect something that's a little more difficult. And for that type of set, for me, that's the T206s, which are these right here, issued from 1909 to 1911. There's 524 cards in the base set, meaning that there's 524 different card fronts. There's many different types of advertisement backs, 16 different in total, and then a lot of those advertisement backs have variations of their own. So you could have one back where it might be just that back, and that's it, such as this polar bear back, and that makes this card back a very popular back to collect, because you're not dealing with a lot of little details such as subject numbers and factory numbers and overprints and different color variations and things like that. And we'll go over some of that stuff. If you haven't seen any of the other videos, I go over a lot of stuff multiple times throughout the videos, and I don't mean to bore anybody, but if you don't see all the videos, it's still important information. And I always say the more you hear something, the more likely you are to remember it. So and not without even trying, if you hear something enough times, those some of the younger collectors out there that are watching this, if you're still in junior high or high school, and you're learning things, and you're being told things, at the time, you probably don't realize that you're really learning anything, and unfortunately you probably won't realize it until after you're out of school. And then you'll come across something one day and you'll say, hey, I know about that. I learned about that in school. But it's funny how the human brain works. When test day comes around, you tend to forget everything. So don't be too discouraged when it comes to things like that. But yeah, if you hear something over, multiple times, you tend to retain it a little bit easier. So like I said, on these cards, they come with different backs. This is the polar bear back. This was a scrap tobacco. So basically it just came in like a pouch or a bag, and then these cards were inserted directly into that. So with polar bear backs, you tend to get some that have staining from the tobacco. You'll actually have spots on the cards. Usually more noticeable in the back, but you will sometimes get the spots on the front, and sometimes you won't get them at all. And it's they're hard to come by when they're like perfectly clean, free of any sort of marks. And those marks on the polar bear backs, they're not considered like stain marks or like a pen mark. If you were to get this graded by, say, PSA, they won't give it that mark qualifier on the holder. But they may give it a lower grade number. So, a card may, grade out of 4 with no marks, but if it in the same condition but with some tobacco stains, it may grade out a 3. So they do still it's still considered within the grade, but they don't penalize you with a qualifier on the holder. So the polar bear backs, very popular subset to collect with these cards. You can collect these cards so many different ways. And this particular card back, there's 250 different cards in the set that you can find with this particular card back. So it's a bit of a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. And I tell everybody, if you get to the point where you finally complete that 250 card set, you can still continue on somewhere else in the same T206 set, maybe with a different back or combinations of backs, because at 250 cards, you're nearly halfway done with the 524 card set. And it's just, it's nice to be able to collect something that's much older, much harder to come by, and it's just something that not every collector has. A majority of collectors, don't even have even one of these cards in their collection. So if you were to collect this set, you would be, put into a special type of a category, I guess you could say. So it was a polar bear back. Condition on these cards, I want to say the average condition, would range, anywhere from like a, something that would grade up like a PSA 1 through a PSA maybe 4 would be the majority of the cards. Anything beyond, above a 4, like a PSA 5, they're still out there, and it all depends what you consider a lot of money. You can probably get a PSA 5 T206 with a little bit of searching, maybe in $100 range, but you're only going to be able to get a small handful of the very common cards at that price, and then anything beyond, say, you go into a PSA 6 or higher, then you're talking big money, just because there's very few that are out there in the higher grades. So, if you're used to collecting the new stuff, you're used to PSA 10s, and if you get a PSA 9, you're, unhappy with it. That's completely different with this set of cards. There's nothing wrong with having a PSA 1. Sometimes you have no choice but to get the PSA 1 because it may be the only grade that particular card front with a certain card back is available in. So you can't be picky about the grades on these. So that's another thing to take into consideration if you're thinking about starting to collect this set. So like on this card here, it's got a sovereign back with a 350 subjects, and like I said, you know, there's 16 different card backs. So you know, these would be 2 of the 16 different. But with the polar bear back, you don't have any types of variations. With the sovereign back, they come in a 150 subject, a 350 subject, and a 460 subject. And then on the 350 subjects, they come in 2 different colors of ink. This one being the dark green. They have another 350 subject that's a lighter green. But you don't have to get 2 cards of the same. All the dark green card backs, you know, match this. So you wouldn't be able to find this card front with the light green version. It would only come in this darker version. So that's something to think about. But it is still a variation of the card back. So if you were collecting card backs, which some collectors will collect these cards just based on the backs, they'll see how many different kinds of combinations they can get. And there's, you know, between 38 and 40 different card back combinations, and you know, there's even a couple others that you could consider adding as part of the T206 collection. And it's somewhat controversial, you know, because some people believe that it is part of the set, and others will say it's not part of the set. But you know, that is one other way to collect these. You could collect a set of the main 16 backs, or you could get into the finer details where you're collecting, you know, all the backs with all the different subject numbers and all the different factory numbers on the bottom, and all the different colors that they come in. And then other people will collect like just one particular back and whatever card fronts that come with it. Now, not every card front comes with all the same card backs. You know, there's all different combinations. So, you know, this card here, you know, that comes in a sovereign 350, you know, may or may not come in a polar bear back, and the same goes for like other cards. And so each one has its own special checklist, basically. So there's, you know, there's a checklist for the polar bears. There's a checklist for the sovereign 350s. There's a checklist for the sovereign 150s. There's one for the sovereign 460s. And so even though it's, you know, one collection of cards, you know, there's, you know, 30 to 40 different checklists. So you know, you can collect this set in so many types of ways. You know, me personally, I collect a master front back collection, and that's basically every single card with every possible card front card back combination that exists. So, you know, in my collection, I would have this particular card front, and I would collect every card back that comes with that same card front. So, you know, you only want to do that if you're looking to, you know, put together the ultimate collection, one that you're going to work on for a lifetime. But I don't recommend jumping into that right away. You know, try to focus on something a little more simple, but still within the T206 set. Here's a George Bell, another Sovereign 350, and this is also the dark green. Let's see if we can find another. No, this is another dark green Sovereign 350. So you could, same thing, you know, you could collect just Sovereign 350s in the dark green only, or you could collect all the Sovereign cards And some of the Sovereign cards, like with the 150s and the 350s, they'll have the same card front, but you'll have a Sovereign 150 version and a Sovereign 350 version. So lots of ways to collect the set. You'll never get bored, with the set. As soon as you get bored with collecting a certain thing in the set, you just pick something else. It's as simple as that. This is Bill Bradley with bat. And this is a polar bear back. You can kind of see some of the tobacco stains on the side there. Here's another back. Sweet Caporal cigarettes. This one here is a 350 subject, and if we can get close enough, you can see it's a factory 30. So 350 subject factory 30 for this particular back is a very common card back, and regardless of card front, even if it's a Hall of Famer, it's still considered one of the more common types of cards. Now, something being common and something being cheap are two different things. You could have, Ty Cobb on the front of this card with the very common back, and it's going to be at the Ty Cobb price level, so you're going to be in the thousands. With a card like this, just a common player with the very common back, you would be starting at around $20 a card. This one would probably be a bit higher just because the condition of it is on the better side. No huge creases. Corners are somewhat there. If this was graded by PSA, sorry about the glare, but if I'd say if I was to send this into PSA, I might get a 2.5 or a 3. I don't think it would get a 4. 4 might be pushing it, but it's, you just never know when you send these in. You never know what you're going to get. The nice thing about sending these in compared to sending the new stuff in, there's such a huge difference between a PSA 10 and a PSA 9. You get a PSA 9 back from a submission, and it's like, it's just not worth anything. You might as well crack the card out of the case. So it's always a lot of money wasted. If it doesn't come back as a 10, it's, like I said, it's almost like just a waste of money and time. With these, it's different. It really doesn't matter, what grade it comes back in. It's going to have a place either in your collection or somebody else's. Even if it comes back as an authentic card but maybe trimmed, there's people out there that actually collect this set in just authentic trimmed cards. And you're not going to run into that with the newer stuff. So, never be discouraged by the grade you get on these. Now, if you bought one that was ungraded and, the dealer said, this is going to, it's a PSA 6 all day long, and you send it in, it comes back a PSA 2, then, I can understand, being a little upset. But you really need to learn how to, grade somewhat. You're never going to be, right on the money, with PSA grading. But if you're at least, within a point, so if you think it's a, maybe a PSA 3 and it comes back a PSA 2, it's not the end of the world. But you never want to think, the card looks great. It's got to be a PSA 8. It's just not going to happen. Even these cards in PSA 8, they look like the cards that you think are PSA 10s, and they come back as PSA 6. So it's just, don't be too discouraged on the grading. This player here, he's got a few different cards in this set, a few different poses. This one here just happens to be a portrait pose. There's different poses. Some people collect the cards by pose. So you'll have people that collect just the portrait cards. You have other people that collect cards where the players are batting, or where they're catching, or where they're pitching, fielding. So a lot of different ways to collect this set. Here's another Sovereign 350 with the dark green. Normally, people would collect the portraits as a kind of like a subset, and just recently a person that actually follows my videos, he was watching one of these videos, and he had commented that he was working on a portrait subset collection, and then when he was done with that, he was going to move on to the players that are batting, and then the players that are catching. And I never really thought about it, where you could actually just, if you like, people, the poses where the players are, with their baseball bats. Technically you could just start collecting this set and just collecting, the cards where the players with their bat. And then when you're finished with that, you could go to maybe portraits, or you could go to where they're fielding, So there's so many different ways to collect it. There's even collectors that will collect the cards based on the color of the background. So they may collect all the cards with the blue backgrounds, and another one with, the yellow backgrounds or the red. And then if you get bored with collecting one of the colors or one of the poses, you jump to another one, or you decide to start collecting just a certain card back, and then you do that for a couple months, and then you get a little tired of that, you go back to something else, and I'll tell you, over a period of time, you will accumulate an impressive collection. As long as you can at least stay focused within the set, such as this one being the T206, as long as you're focused within the set, but you collect it in all different kinds of ways, at some point you're going to have a nice accumulation of cards that will, fit in so many different types of collections. So you'll never have a problem, finding a buyer for these cards, because there's always somebody looking for something, and they're willing to pay good money. It's not like some of the new stuff where you're paying a ton of money, and then you try to sell it, and people just don't even want it. And if they do, show some sort of interest, they're giving you a price that's insulting. And so, with these cards, you don't have to worry about that. And that's, goes with, many of the vintage sets. So I'm not, you don't necessarily have to collect T206 because I said so. There's the T205 set, which is really nice. It's got a lot of different back variations. There's a couple other sets out there that have different back variations. There's actually some sets where they have the player and the backgrounds are in different colors. So you would have the same player, and you'd have a purple background, and then a red background, and an orange background, and they're technically they're all the same card in the set, but they're different variations of the same card, kind of like a parallel card of today. So same thing with those sets. You could collect, just the cards, with the red backgrounds, and you put together a set of the reds, and then you finish that, and you decide, okay, now I'm gonna, put the same set together, with the green version of each card, or you just have one favorite player, so you just click that one player with all the different, colored backgrounds, and it's really no different than what people are doing today. You know, like the 2019 Tops, you know, they come with the special silver packs, where the cards are kind of like a reflective, you know, type of card, and they, you know, have special inserts that are in different colors, and it's technically it's the same card. They're just, you know, they're, you know, they have a different color background on the card, and then they're also serial numbered. So, you know, like the 2019s, they have the base card in the silver pack, and then they have the blue, you know, which is serial numbered to 150, and then they've got green that goes to 99, purple that goes to 75, gold that goes to 50, orange to 25, red to 5, and then they have a platinum version, which is 1 to 1. So it's, you know, it's almost like the same type of collecting. You can, you know, almost collect the same kind of way you may be used to collecting the new cards now, but do the same thing but just with vintage, and, you know, have less of a risk with your money, just because things aren't overly produced. You know, nowadays with, you know, the new cards, they have to put a serial number on them, or they have to put a, you know, an autograph or something to make the card, you know, worth anything, unfortunately. You know, I'm not saying don't collect new stuff, you know, but you may not want to go overboard with some of the new stuff. Here's a Jack Knight. Jack Knight's got a, you know, a couple cards. This is his, you know, with bat, and then he's got one where it's a portrait card. This one here, the back is practically missing, but it's I can tell you it's an American Beauty cigarette back. It's a 350 subject, and I know that because you can see a frame around the edge. These came in 350 with the frame, 350 without frame, and then 460 without frame. So if you see the frame at all and you're missing the rest of it, you automatically know it's a 350 with frame. And you know, normally you would steer clear of a card like this with this much damage, but this card front with this card back, you know, if you look up population numbers in, you know, the PSA or SGC population reports, you're going to see that the numbers are very low. So if something comes along, you may just have to, you know, purchase it, and then worry about upgrading it at a later time if another one shows up. You know, last thing you want to do is get stuck with, you know, a bunch of holes in your collection because, you know, you passed up a couple cards like this, and then you find out 5 years later that those cards you passed up are still the only cards that have shown up, and then at that point it's too late. You know, you'd give anything to get one of the, you know, another chance at one of them. So, you know, obviously you'll be able to pick these up with, you know, cheaper because of this. So, you know, it's not like you're throwing money away. And again, like I said, you know, if you find another one where it's got a clean back on it, and same card front, and this becomes an extra for sale, there's always a collector that would be searching for this combination and, you know, to add it to their collection, because they may be in the same situation where they're missing this card in their American Beauty set, and, you know, they're at a point where they're just, you know, they're willing to take just about anything just to fill that one spot until something else better comes along. All right, and let's see what we got here. Another Sovereign 350. I don't, my ungraded cards like these, I don't have them in any particular order. So sometimes I just, you can kind of see where, my buying patterns maybe change over time. You may see, a few polar bear backs in a row, or you might see a few sovereign backs in a row. And that's just because, as I buy them and, I get them, sent to me and everything, I'll, in most cases, have to, remove the cards from whatever, packaging that they were sent in, because, usually these are, all taped up, or they're sticky, or they got price tags on them, or whatever. So I'll just remove the card, from the one that it's sent in, and I'll put it in a nice, new one, and then it just goes, into a box to, where I, decide if and when, they're going to go to, PSA for, grading. And, between all the grading companies, I prefer PSA. I'm going to be doing a video at some point, comparing all the different ones, especially when you're comparing it with the vintage cards. Some people will say, SGC is better for vintage, but PSA is better for modern. Some say it's the other way around. Some say PSA for everything. And honestly, I'm just comfortable with PSA, just because it was something I always collected, ever since they came out. Now, it doesn't mean I don't buy anything SGC graded or Beckett graded. I do it all the time. And at some point, I'll get those cards crossed over, or I'll crack them out of the case and send them in as raw. But until that time comes, they just sit in their SGC cases or their Beckett's, or there's a few other oddball grading companies out there that I don't recommend. But I end up picking the cards up just because they may have been a difficult front back combination. And you got another polar bear back. And you'll see a lot of these in my collection. There's 250 in a set. I happen to be at 245. So you're more likely to see a lot of the polar bear backs, as we kind of go through everything I have. And like I said, again, another polar bear. And another polar bear. So you can see that, like I said, my buying patterns. I may have been, stuck on polar bear for a little while, and then I get bored with it, and then I, jump into something else. This one here, Cycle cigarettes. More difficult card back. This one especially because it's a 460 subject. Cycle came in 350 subject and 460 subject, and there's collectors out there that will collect either just the 350s only, or just the 460s only. They both have their own checklists, and but the 460s are much more difficult to come by. The 460s are considered 1911 cards. The 350s are more of a 1910, and then 150 subjects are 1909. And with the Cycle cigarettes, they didn't have them for 1909. But this is, like I said, one of the more difficult card backs. And if you wanted more of a challenge, like polar bear, we know it's 250 cards in the set. With another back like Cycle cigarettes, that number becomes a little more questionable. We may have an idea of a range where a set may consist of, but we can't say, it's definitely this number and no more or no less. Just because there's certain cards that we believe should exist, that just haven't come up yet. And then there's other cards, that you just don't know. It's one of those things where I say, it's part of what makes the set fun to collect. And if you're doing like all the different card backs, obviously this would be one of the card backs you'd have to collect. This guy, Irv Young, just if you see the last name Young, don't get confused. It's not Cy Young, even though Cy Young is in this collection. This isn't Cy Young. And this is Sovereign 350. Like I said, you have all these different types of poses. So it's like if a player's got more than one pose, they may call this pose, arm in air. They'll have other poses for cards where arms, at hips, or arms above head, or the players, might be bending down or a glove near ground. So there's a whole bunch of ways that they classify which card it is that they're talking about, because these cards don't have card numbers like cards have now. These were you basically put them in order by most people put them in order by alphabetical order, but because of the way the set is, you can build the collection any way you want, and you can also display it any way you want. Some people display these, the T206 set, where they'll break it down to, into different teams. Others will break it down into color patterns. Some will break it down, alphabetical order. Others will break it down into the different print groups or the years that the cards were produced in. So there's just as many ways of displaying the collection as there is collecting the collection. This is Boss Schmidt, another Sovereign 350, the dark green. Now the light green is, I guess you could call it the more difficult of the two, but it really doesn't add any value, only because, like I said, the light green cards are going to be the light green cards, the dark green will be the dark green. Now if you could get the same card with both different color variations, then there would be definitely a premium on the lighter green. But because there's no swapping of the two, price-wise, the premium really isn't. It's either not noticeable or it's just always been there from day one. And this is another card back, Tolstoy. This card back, doesn't. It's similar to like the polar bear back, where it doesn't have a particular subject number or factory number. Now it does have a factory number on the bottom, just like polar bear has a factory number, but that's the same factory number for every one of these card backs. So it doesn't take, you don't have to worry about that as far as collecting different variations. This is another popular card back to collect, especially if you're looking for a challenge, because many of these cards, the population reports are in the single digits for a lot of the cards, and this is counting PSA and SGC numbers and combining them, and you still have population numbers below 10. And then there's, like I said, there's others that are where they believe are part of the set, but they just haven't been found yet. So if you're looking for something that's more difficult to do, you could go with a chasing this card back. The Cycle 350 or the Cycle 460 that we saw earlier, is also, a difficult back, but the only difference with that is you do have the different subject numbers. So you'll have 350 subject and 460 subject. With this particular back, although they don't tell you what subject number it is, the card, the particular card front may have been made, in the 350 subject, and another one may have been made in the 460 subject, but they just didn't break it down on the card back. But, definitely fun back to collect, but don't expect it to be done easily, and don't expect it to be done cheaply either. Very expensive, these cards, for a common one, I would say probably for maybe like a PSA 1 or even a PSA 2, if you can find one for $75, that would be a good deal. So you got to take that into consideration also. With polar bear backs, you can pick up a common polar bear and a PSA 1 or a PSA 2, for still be in the $30 range, and there's a large number of them that will cover a majority of the set that will fall into that that price range. But on this particular back, just because of those population numbers, the price is going to go high on a lot of them, where it may be considered a common with another back. A card with this particular back, the card is just the opposite of being a common. So, definitely, take that into consideration. Just because there may be common players on the front doesn't automatically make it a common card for that particular card back. This is a Hooks Wiltsey. He's got a few different cards. He's got a portrait. He's got portrait without a hat, which is this one. He's got portrait with a hat. He's got I'm pretty sure it was I want to say a batting pose. And because this set was produced over a 3-year period, some of them, got different cards for each of the years. Other players in the set, even though it's over a 3-year period, they may have only gotten one card. Some players have even up to 5 different poses. Hal Chase is one of them. He's got 5 different cards. That's the most of any of the players in the whole set. And then you've got players like Ty Cobb that have 4 different poses. This is a Frank Parent. This here is a Sovereign 150 back, so you can see, the difference. Same advertisement back. These would be considered the same card if you're collecting the 16 card advertisement set. But if you're collecting like the master advertisement set, where you've got 48 or 30, between 40 and 50 cards, you would need both of these because you have a 150 subject and a 350. And the 150 subject is, I think the 150 subject is probably the most difficult of the 3 for Sovereign. For one reason, there's a decent amount of cards in the 150 subject subset. In the 460 subset, there's only 52 cards, and they're all fairly easy to come by, except for 6 of the cards. Those last 6 cards are extremely difficult, and that's the only thing that keeps the 460 subject set probably considered more of a difficult card back. But the 150 subjects, these are becoming much more popular lately, and they're selling faster and they're selling for more money. So if you're looking to maybe put together a set of the different backs, this is a card back I recommend getting fairly soon, because people are starting to realize their true rarity and they're buying them up, and then they'll hold on to them for a bit until everybody starts to wonder where they all went, and then they'll slowly sell them off at a huge profit. It's Owen Wilson, Sovereign 350. This card here, it's a Boston team. This card has been known to have missing red ink. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of the missing red ink cards. You have to be real careful with those, even if they're graded and authenticated by PSA or SGC. If you do come across one, you want to look at the back of the card. A lot of times there'll be back damage or paper loss or a stain on the back. And when these cards were collected back then, a lot of people would glue them into scrapbooks, and the type of glue it would have a chemical in it that would seep through the card and would actually literally just erase the red ink, but it would leave everything else exactly the same. So it would look like it literally missed the red print pass on the card, when in reality it was just a chemical from way back that over time did damage to the card. And so you got to be real careful when you see those on eBay, or if you see somebody selling one. The first thing you want to look at is the card back. And even if the card back is perfect, doesn't necessarily mean it's the real deal. That's why I personally stay away from them. Now, if I come across one that's the price is in line with like a normal one that would have like the red ink, if it's like $30 and that's the red ink card is $30, and this one's missing the red ink or looks to be missing it, and it's still $30, well, then maybe I take a chance, because I'm not really losing a whole lot. I'm not like, it's not like I'm paying a premium on the card. And there's the Sovereign 460. So you can see they got the all the three here. Where was the other one? There it is. So you got the 150, you got the 350, and then you've got the 460. So you got 1909, 1910, 1911. And they weren't printed like like the first day of 1909. They didn't start coming out with these. And the same thing with the 350s. It wasn't like the first day of 1910 they were 350 subject. It's just a somewhat ballpark area, and us T206 collectors tend to use that as more of a reference to kind of like classify the different cards. And even SGC will do it. If you notice on some of their cases, they'll list it a T206, and then it will say 1909, 1910, or 1911, and basically they're getting that particular year based on the subject number. So, but PSA doesn't do that. And there's a polar bear. There's a card here in some rough shape. It looks like it's got some pencil marks on the front, some paper loss, some major creasing. But it is a polar bear back, so it was probably one I picked up fairly inexpensive, and it filled that hole in the set. And what will happen is, at some point I'll get these, graded by PSA. Chances are this will come back as a PSA 1. And then at some point, I may decide to upgrade it. I may upgrade it to, I probably wouldn't go any higher than a PSA 4, just because of the way the pricing is. PSA 4 is a nice, clean card, where it doesn't affect the pocket too much, so like this card here in a PSA 1 may be a, $30 card, and a PSA 4, might be like a $120 card. So it is more, but it's not crazy out of control. And when I bought these cards, and even still to this day when I buy them, I mainly buy them because of the rarity, and then I always have, I always know I have the option to upgrade at a later time, and I don't have to hurry and rush to do it because I already have, the card for the set. So if I don't get around to upgrading it, it's not the end of the world. I still have the card. Now, if I was to pass up the card because of the condition and wait for like a PSA 4 to come along, and if it doesn't come along, I'm missing the card. Or what if it comes along and I just don't have, enough money at that particular time for it? I'm still missing the card. So you want to take those, those thoughts into consideration, when building this set, and depending on how you build the set. And this is like the same scenario, a ton of creases in all different directions. Even though the corners are, fairly good, the card is just destroyed. But, like I said, it's polar bear back. If I had to guess, I probably paid $15 for the card. And at the same time, being 100% fine with it, because I knew that at some point in the future I can always upgrade it, and I'll always be able to get the money back that I put into this one. I always keep track of what I spend on each of these cards, so I can look back and see what I spent on it. And worst case scenario, I get exactly what I paid for it. And so I don't make any money over my investment over the period of years, but I don't lose money either. And in most cases, I'll probably be able to tack on a few more dollars than what I actually paid, because there are collectors out there that are going to be in the same scenario where they don't have a lot of money to spend, and they may be fine with just PSA 1 and PSA 2 cards. And I'm considered an advanced collector, and I have absolutely no problem having a polar bear card that grades a PSA 1 in my collection. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. This is another one of the Sweet Capital cards. This is a 350-460 subject, which basically just means that this is a 460 subject card. They did this 350-460 on Piedmont. They did it on the Sweet Capitals. But bottom line is this is considered a 460. And this is a factory 30. And this is what I believe to be a hand-cut card from a sheet. And it came from the collection of cards that are known as Factory 30 no prints. And I've gone about, through it on some of my other videos, and I will be doing a video strictly on these cards. And basically it's just a card that somebody that probably worked at the print shop that made these cards took a sheet home to their kids. They cut it up at home, and 100 plus years later, here's the card. The only difference is this particular card front with this exact card back does exist as a normal card that was inserted into cigarette packs. So it doesn't really give this card a whole lot of value, because this card technically, you know, if I get it graded, it's going to come back as an authentic card, but it's going to come back as trimmed or hand cut. So the value in this card is only based on, you know, what a collector is willing to pay if they want a card from that particular grouping of cards. Now there are cards that are just like similar to this, hand cut with the same back, but they don't exist in the cigarette packs. Now those are a whole different story. Those are worth a lot of money, because even though they're hand cut, you can't find the same front back combination anywhere else, because some of these cards came with an overprint on them, and you know, there's a set of those cards where the overprint is missing. So somebody took a sheet home along with another sheet like that this particular card was on. They cut both sheets up at home, and you know, here we are today. But one of those two sheets that were cut up was supposed to still go through a print process and get that overprint printed on them, and it never did. And then the other sheet just never required the overprint. So you know, and that's the case with this one. So like I said, I'm gonna go you know, and eventually make a video on those, because it's very interesting but confusing at the same time, and I have to, like, you know, break down the different ways these were printed. And this is another one from that same grouping, you know, with the 350 subject. So it's you know, it's considered a hand cut card from a uncut, you know, from a, you know, complete sheet. This one also from the same collection, but these are not the real valuable no print cards, even though they came from the same collection. Here's a Hal Chase. Like I said, he's got 5 different cards in the collection. This card here is considered his where he's throwing, and he's got a black hat. He also has a similar version of this card where he's throwing a ball, but he's got a white hat. So he's got 5 total. He's got the dark hat throwing, white hat throwing. He's got another one where he's holding a trophy. And then he's got 2 portrait cards, one with a blue background and one with a pink background. So this is the throwing, and then with a black hat, Tolstoy. Okay, so same thing. This card back, you know, very difficult. And then, you know, when you compare it to the card front, you start looking up the population numbers, you start to see, you know, where these you know, cards fall as far as you know, rarity. There's another card that's in pretty rough shape. This is a Sweet Caporal 350 Subject Factory 25. Funny thing about these cards, the 350 Subject Factory 30s are considered, you know, extremely common. So this, you know, this card front and this card back with the Factory 30 would be considered a very common card, especially in this condition. It would probably be like a $15 to $20 card. But this card here with the Factory 25 on the bottom, it just has a much lower population number. And I probably picked this up at a $15 price range just because of the condition of it, but had the bonus of it having the Factory 25. You know, plus the other thing with this card, you can kind of see, you know, it's got some sort of a marking on it, but if you look kind of closely at it, it's actually the letter W. You or if you flip it around, I guess it could be the letter M. But I think it's a W, and there are actually collectors of T206 cards that collect these cards with stamps on the back, of different letters or numbers or designs. So that was one of the other things that was interesting about this card. And like I said, if I had to guess, if I had looked it up on my spreadsheet, I guarantee I didn't pay any more than 20 bucks for it. And I got a few more cards, and then we'll call this video quits, and just because it's getting up there in time. Sovereign 350, dark green. So Joe Tinker, Hall of Famer. He's got a few poses. This one's considered his hands on knees pose. And this is a Sweet Capital 150 subject, factory 30. So this is a common back also. And overall a common card, even though this is a Hall of Famer and it's going to command a extra premium just because of Hall of Fame status. But this card here, I don't believe it wasn't the only reason why I picked this card up. This card here, if you look at his shirt, it says Cubs on it. This particular card has a variation, which is only maybe 2 or 3 cards have shown up where the shirt actually, you can actually see the word Chicago on it. And if you look on this particular card, you can kind of see some of the the marks and the lines in there, like between the B and the S. You can kind of see the top part of an O, and you can see also inside of the C you can see some other markings. Let me see if I can try to zoom in a little bit better on this, or at least get it to focus. But if you compare like this card with some of the other ones of his, you won't see those markings. So that, that was the main reason why I ended up picking this card up, because you can kind of see the smaller C of Chicago inside, partially inside and outside of the C. And if you follow along, you can see some of the letters, and it's extremely rare variation. Like I said, there's only like I said, 2 or 3 out there, and some of them you can see. You can find these cards where they have just a very faint portion of it left. But this one here was one card that I found that still had a decent amount of it, still noticeable. This card in that variation, I'll probably do a video on. It just should be recognized a little bit more in the hobby, and it really hasn't completely. There's another polar bear back. This is a card here. It's got some what we would consider major creases, but on a T206, it kind of comes with the territory. And when you start seeing some of the prices for cards without creases, you may start to like cards with creases. So this is polar bear back, and the last card for today. Another polar bear back with some tobacco stains on the bottom. Alright, so sorry for the long video. I like to be extremely thorough on these videos. Hopefully I got some people out there that watch them from start to finish, and actually pick up a few tips, learn a few things, and maybe give you some ideas that you may not have thought about. And also talk about different variations you may not have known existed, and now you can go on, say, eBay, and search around at some of the scans of some of the cards, and who knows what you might find. If you like the video, definitely helps if you give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions about any of the cards in the video or anything on the set, or anything collectible related, you can leave questions in the comments section, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to the channel. It definitely helps give me a little extra boost in making additional videos. At some point, I would like to do this a little more on a full-time basis, and be able to get out there, at different shows and connect with other collectors, and do some special events in different areas, and try to get the keep the hobby alive, basically. So like I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Hopefully at some point, I have to get to a certain level of viewers and subscribers in order for me to get compensated for the videos I make. So when I make these videos, it costs me money, because I'm paying for obviously some of the equipment that I use, the editing software. If I go to a baseball card show and I'm showing you things from there, I'm paying gas money and show admission, and and I enjoy doing it, and that's why I do it. But I'd like to eventually get to that point where I don't have to think about some of the added expenses in the back of my mind, and be able to show you content that's HD quality, because I've got the better equipment and everything. So if you have friends that are collectors, people in your family that are collectors, I'd appreciate it extremely if you have you mention my channel to them, or send them a link to my channel, asking them if they would subscribe to the channel. I appreciate every person that subscribes. It's a community that, like I said, I'm just trying to keep this alive with another group of people out there that make similar videos like this. So we all need as much help as we can possibly get. So hitting that subscribe button helps a lot. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm sorry the video was a long one today, but there were some cards that I definitely need to explain certain things about them, and the last thing I want to do is not tell you everything that you need to know. That's the purpose of these videos, is to help educate. So like I said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.